All right,
Okay.
this is the Wednesday radio night Zoom, and Pat's going to start us off. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, thanks, Franklin. A little bit ago, I sent in a request to the groups about a wood radio I was working on, and it had a lot of black spots on it. And I just asked to see what is the best way to go and refinish this radio. So here, let me show you a picture of what it looks like before I started. I don't know if you can see that well, but you can see that there's a lot of black spots here and up here all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not varnished, it's the actual wood of the radio. But when I sent the picture in to everyone, they said the majority of people said try this oxalic acid. And so I went to Blake's and I got some. It's basically white crystals or white powder that you mix with water. So what I did is I went ahead and I just got a little baby jar, filled up the crystals, and added some warm water to it to mix it up. And from there, what I did is I just took a foam brush and I dipped it in there, and then I applied it to the top of the radio. So this radio is still unfinished, but you can see the difference between what I started to what I have now. See, this is all nice natural wood, and all those black spots are all gone now. And it really worked really good, and it was actually quite fast working. It didn't take hardly any time for it to remove all the black spots. I don't know what magic it does, but it is an acid. So I assume that it would go ahead and bleach the wood. Maybe it would kill the mold or whatever that black stuff is. And I'm really happy with the results.
You think that was mold?
Well, I'm not sure. Here, I'll go back to the original picture here. You can just see that it's just a bunch of black marks. There's no finish on the radio. There's not like varnish or anything. It's just like wood. And I'm not sure what the black marks are. Now, when I read about it on the internet, people talked about black marks as a result of water staining. So water is clear, but I don't know how it would cause black marks on the wood, unless it was something like mold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
sure looks like it.
Now this stuff is an acid and it's very corrosive. So they want to make sure that you guys have some kind of eye protection and also some kind of protection like latex gloves, because you don't want to splash it on you. Now after you apply it and then let it dry, what will happen is that there will be like a coating. It looks like white dust on it. There looks like there'll be white dust on there, and you want to make sure that if you want to remove that and start sanding it, you do it outside with clothing on and eye protection and gloves, because when you sand this, that white dust is actually dried particles of the oxalic acid, and you don't want to inhale it, and you don't want to get it on your skin. You want to make sure that you're well protected from it. So you obviously have to do it outside. Now, some of the people recommend that you, after you apply the bleach, that you take some water mixed with baking soda to neutralize the acid. And you can do that, dip your rag in there, kind of like this in your solution, and rub it off. And of course, after you're done, you want to make sure you throw away your rag or your brush that you're using, because I don't think you should try to clean it, because like I say, it's a very corrosive acid. What I did is I went ahead and after the radio was, after I applied the bleach, I used like lacquer thinner or wood thinner, and I actually just poured it all over the wood and rubbed it off. Of course, when you're done with the rags or paper towels, you want to make sure you throw those away because they'll be soaked in the acid. So I wanted to kind of dilute what was on here before I started sanding, because I wanted to remove everything as much as possible, because if I had a lot of dust with the crystals in it, if I started sanding, it would go everywhere. So some people on the internet also recommend washing it down with water. But I mean, if we just put water on it and it molded, I don't see why we should do that. So that's why I went with a petroleum-based product. And like I say, other people recommend baking soda mixed with water to apply on here to neutralize the acid. So as you can see, it worked out really well, and I'm really happy with those results. So now I can start, sanding and staining it and continue working with it, because, if this was sanded and stained, I think that would look really awful.
Looks really nice now, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions on this? When I went to Blake's house, I took the last of his acid. So what we're going to do is we're going to buy it in quantity and then pass the savings to other people. So if you guys want to let me know if you would like a little bit, you wouldn't need much. I think like a quarter or even an eighth of a pound is probably more than you need for a while. I'm thinking about buying it in like a 2-pound bag and then divvying it up to people and then letting them divvy up further. But if you want to be included in on it, we can go ahead and just, if I get a lot of responses, maybe we'll buy a 5-pound bag. Obviously, the more you buy, the cheaper it gets. So, if you guys have your own supply, that's different. But if you want to get some and you don't have any, I have to order some, and we want to buy it in large enough quantities to pass on the savings.
How expensive is it, Pat?
I think a couple of pounds is about $12. And of course, if you buy 5 or 10 pounds, then the price per pound gets a lot cheaper.
Yeah,
So,
that's real reasonable.
Yeah, a couple of bucks, you would get enough to do, I'm sure, plenty of radios, because like I say, there was some acid put in there and mixed up. And when you apply it, it's just like, painting it on there. Like this little bit right here would probably do a couple more radios. So you don't need very much. And the instructions tell you how much to mix it, how much acid mix with the water. So, I don't think you want to make it too strong, but if you don't make it too weak, from what I understand, it will take some of the black away, but it won't take all of it. So you want to make sure that you mix a proper amount.
How much sanding have you done on that one?
Well, actually, very little. What happens is there's a little sandy marks there, but it was pretty smooth to begin with. And I really haven't had to do much with it. But I think it was because since it was raw wood when I got it, I think maybe someone had already done some sanding on it and then they just gave up. But I had to do very little. This is mostly all original. There you can see a little bit of sandy marks this way because there was a bit of black mark. Well, there's like some varnish left there, and I wanted to take that off and remove it. The oxalic acid does not remove like varnish and like polyurethane. It just basically bleaches the wood. So this wasn't totally removed up here, so I had to try to sand that off to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pat, oxalic acid is used for mite control in beehives. So if you're a beekeeper, you actually mix oxalic acid, the powder, the wood bleach with water, and you heat it and make a vapor and put it in the beehive, and it kills the mites that infects beehives. And you can often buy it at bee supply houses.
Well, it's very caustic. Would it harm the bees if you
Actually, no, it doesn't harm the bees. I imagine it stresses them, but I don't think it harms them. But it does harm the mites.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting, but the safety protocol is, as you say, safety glasses, gloves, your bee suit, the whole PPE protective kind of thing. I think, as I recall, 10 pounds was around $40 or $45 or something, but you don't use a lot of it. I mean, it's as you said, it's pretty caustic.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, I was going to go to my next thing. I bought this radio. Well, I guess maybe I'll show what it looks like now from Seattle, and I got it really cheap, but it needed refinishing. And then what happens, I didn't notice, but the dial, there was a big hole in the dial, and it was caused by the light bulb, and it actually burnt the round hole in it. And so I didn't see it because it was just a perfectly round hole with light bulb, you could see the light bulb through it. So Sunny has a link to buy these new replacement bulbs. They're like LED replacements, but because it's an LED light, the white light is real intense and bright. You can kind of see it's kind of washed out right here.
Yeah.
Two things. One, we really believe in people's privacy, and the way they manipulate data is a problem. We do want to prevent interference in elections. We also want to have a broader protection against
Somebody want to turn their radio off? Or
Who is that?
So we're providing them to be able to sue big tech under our unfair and deceptive trade practices.
I'll mute them right now if they text me if they need to come back.
Oh, okay. So
All right.
what happened is I talked to Sunny, and he was able to give me a reproduction dial at a discount. So he sells these dials, reproduction dials, and he'll sell it to members at a discount. So I don't know if you can tell now, but you can see that it's not as intense up here. I mean, because the picture was a lot of good, but you can tell now that it's a lot more, the light is a lot more even, and it doesn't have that really bright washed out area right up there. So what I did is when I sent out that link, and then we talked, I think we talked about it at the last meeting, that people recommended that to reduce that intense white LED light is that you sand it. So what I did, here's an example what it looks like, is I went ahead and I used 600 sandpaper and just basically sanded the clear spot so that it's kind of an opaque color. So this is what it would look like. Oops. This is what it looks like before I started. You can see that it's totally clear.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And now because it's a little milky color, I think it diffuses the light a lot more evenly. And what I did is I just sanded it with 600 sandpaper. So Sunny has a link to this website that you can buy these at a discount if you buy 20 of them. So I think what we should do is maybe make an order. Maybe people can benefit, because I've seen these priced like $4 to $6 if you try to buy one. But
Wow.
if you buy like 20 of them, it gets down to like $2 each. So I think that's the better way to go. So if you guys, want to send me or Sunny an email, want some of these and how many, then maybe we can make an order when we get to like 20 or close to 20. So this is a 47 type. You can see the little pins on each side. They do also make it with the threaded. And I'm not sure the number of this bulb with the threads. I think it might be a 50, not sure. But anyhow, they do have these, I think this is a fairly common bulb, the number 47s.
Those are nice. I've made my own, but it's so nice to just be able to buy it made,
Yeah.
You make your own?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I wanted to point out there, you might not be able to see it, but I put super glue on both parts, the white plastic to the metal base, to the clear lens to the white base. Trust me, you want to super glue these together, because if you stick one of these in a radio and it has one of those rubber collars, when you go to pull it out, if you don't pull it by this clear part, trust me, by experience, the bulb will pull apart. There's very little holding it together. So you've got to super glue them together so they don't pull apart. And once you pull them apart, I don't think you can fix it, because there's a soldered capacitor between the two. Maybe it's a resistor. I don't know. I'm not sure what it is, but there's something soldered in there, but it's not glued together.
So is there a diode in them, in those two?
Well,
Yeah.
maybe that's what it was. All I know is after pulling it apart, I went ahead and looked inside, and there is a little, it could be a diode. There's a little round thing. I didn't bother looking at it. I was kind of irritated because I destroyed one of them by just pulling it apart. So I don't know if it's a diode, a resistor, or a capacitor. I'm sure someone who's got more experience would know what's inside.
There'd be a diode and a resistor to limit the current, and a diode to make it go the right way. A regular LED, it looks like a diode in one direction, and in the other direction, it kind of looks like a zener. And so one direction you got like 0.6 or 0.8 volts, and the other direction you got 1.2 or 2.3, depending upon the color of it.
I have a Telefunken that or a Philips radio, I guess, that I put two of those in, and they flicker. They actually flicker, and I don't quite understand why they flicker, other than that somehow they've broken down the reverse or something.
They don't have a capacitor in there.
Could be.
It doesn't smooth out the sun.
Yeah. Doesn't give you DC to the LED.
Smooth DC, right?
So what you're getting is basically 60 hertz to it.
Yeah.
Now, if you would put a bridge in there, at least you'd get 120 hertz. But I don't know.
Don't all
what the
diodes
capacitor-
flicker, right? Originally, but it's just a matter of what hertz they flicker at, right?
Yeah, we've got Christmas lights that flicker. And it turns out it's one string might be on the positive half and the other string on the negative half, and maybe they're both on the positive half. I put a current probe looking at those dumb things, and they do flicker because they're doing 60 hertz, just half-wave rectifying.
They're setting them in capacitors, right? So it'll smooth out the signal, and then it will smooth out the flicker, right?
I don't know what Pat's got, whether those flicker or not. He may have a capacitor in there to help flicker.
Well, when I was noticing, when I was looking at this, it's just a white light, but when I was displaying on the phone, it looked like it was flickering. Can you guys see the flickering when I displayed this when it was on?
It doesn't look like it's flickering to me.
No, it's not on now, but
Oh,
when I was looking at this light while I was on the phone, on my phone, it looked like it was flickering.
oh, but not to your eyes, huh?
No.
So it's beating between the refresh rate on your phone and the 60 hertz.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, if you try to videotape, well, if you've got a dash cam and it records, a lot of times you'll see all this flickering going on brake lights and stuff. And basically, they're doing LEDs and they're duty cycling the current going to them. They change the duty cycle to change the brightness.
Okay. Well, Franklin, that's all I've got for now. I was going to
Well, that's good. Thanks, Pat. I sure appreciate it.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking, guys, is when we don't have a subject or we don't have a tech talk, that I would come up with some questions or some just entertaining things for us to talk about during the thing. Yeah, it flickers a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, on my phone.
On the video. But your eyes, it doesn't flicker.
No, I don't see any flickering, but on the phone here, I can definitely see it flicker.
Yeah.
I can hear it.
So,
I'm sorry, what?
I can hear it.
Oh,
You
Yeah,
hear it's humming.
Yeah.
yeah. It's got a little hum. I don't have an antenna hooked up to it.
Doesn't know the words.
So has anybody tried on a radio that requires an external antenna, wire antenna? Has anybody tried hooking a loop antenna on, and does that work? reasonable or?
I think it can. It just kind of depends, I guess. It probably depends on the input impedance of the receiver, I think.
Mhm.
I think that some have put on there, and I've used the any radio that has loop antenna. I've used that select antenna, like a little cheap transistor, little portable that you with a real tiny loop in it. You can take that select antenna, put it next to it, and it'll couple magnetically, I guess you'd say, crossed and really boost them up. But
Yeah, you got a bigger loop to bring more energy in and transfer it over to the small
yeah,
one. Yeah.
I think I did that on a was it on a 12 tube Zenith actually. I sold. I had, I think, a loop, a small loop, and a couple wires on it. Like using an old stereo receiver, and then a select antenna, so you could get some decent reception with an indoor antenna, so to speak. There. Yeah, you get varying degrees of success with it, I guess. So.
Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah, because they really weren't designed to use a loop antenna, but yeah, when you can't go, with 100-foot wire antenna, you want to do it indoors. Why?
Now, have you ever seen one of those Philcos in the 1941 Philco that has the push buttons, that has this, the brown sketching that shrinks and stuff, and they have a pretty good sizable loop inside those in the consoles and stuff, and it's like I think it was like about 4 or 5 turns, but it was maybe 2 feet across and maybe 3 foot high or something like that. And boy, that was like the quietest receiver as far as picking up noise and stuff. I could back in Washougal, I could listen to the Seattle like KVI in the middle of the day in the basement of the house in Washougal, which is 200 miles away and stuff like that. It was very well. It was very well matched to it.
Would that help with like interference? Like, my wheelchair, if I get close to a radio wheelchair, the radio will scream like crazy, because there's so much.
Okay, so your loop antennas, they have a null to the pattern, and so it could very well help with interference. Something you just have to try it and see, but generally I find that it helps using like a loop inside the building where you got noises and stuff, because it's got a clear null in the center of the donut hole, so to speak. If you think
Yeah, it's pretty sensitive, that null low. But basically your wheelchair is probably putting out magnetic interference rather than electric field. And so probably the rod or the tuned coil would probably pick it up more than a long wire antenna would.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's probably the motors, right? The magnetic motors that it's picking up.
Well,
could be the controls. The computer control for the motors, chopping the volts on and off for your speed control and stuff.
Yeah. And it could be just a wire. A lot of times it's a wire to the motor that radiates.
Oh, really? Just a wire, huh?
Yeah, you want twisted pair. Got that? Because the currents go equal and opposite and the twisted pair stops the radiation from going out that well.
Oh, cool.
Of course, you could shield that too on top of it.
all kinds of things. It's a real challenge here, in town where I live at in Kona, because everybody's got solar panels on their houses, and of course everybody's here. They got the cable modems, and the Motorola brand ones are hideously. They're very good transmitters for jamming low frequencies, and it's just It's a real issue. So I've been playing with a lot of us have been playing loop antennas for reception and stuff on the handbands, and for that matter for broadcast.
Were you here when I demonstrated my Canon scanner?
No,
First, let me close the door so I don't disturb my wife.
you said your Canon scanner. What is a Canon scanner? Oh, you mean?
He was real close to a radio station, so
Where
he
you
gets a lot of
scan-
different.
where you scan documents in.
Okay.
Okay. Better get my glasses on here. Oh, well, can I get it in? Yeah, there.
Yeah.
Come on.
I see it.
Okay.
And you got your radio sitting right on top of it. Yeah.
Now let me turn the scanner on.
That's just the power supply. But see, you're in the near field there.
Yeah, he's pretty close.
Yeah, see, that's the thing on your loop antennas. When you see you're in the close near field, and so there's not much of a pattern real tight into the radio. So I mean, that's if you moved it, if you put it on couple feet away, you could probably easily null out the noise and stuff if you're with the loop
All
antenna.
I have to do is put it near another socket.
Uh-huh.
What happens is I used to have, well, I still do have some of the X10. It communicates 120 kilohertz over the power line to turn things on and off remotely.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of quit working. And so I took the panel off the breaker box and I started sniffing around with a current probe on each breaker. And all this shit was coming from my own lab here. What? Finally, even though it wasn't turned on, just plugged in, it sits there and screams.
Oh yeah. Wonderful, all these wonderful, efficient switching power supplies.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, to run my remote control stuff, I now just unplug the scanner when I'm not using it.
Also, it was jamming. Yes, and I've had the same. I have the solar panels have micro inverters in each panel, and they communicate by about 140 kilohertz to the modem, which collects the runtime and stuff, and and all the data. So it's the same thing. You got to find a quiet outlet or location to plug in the modem for it to talk to the solar panels up on the roof. It's the same old thing.
Yeah, it's run for years here, and then all of a sudden it just quit working. And I had the scanner for quite a while, but I think the line filtering has gone bananas inside it. I went to take it apart and I said, oh God, how do you get in there safely without busting the scanner totally?
You get a lot of feed of that radio station near you too, Bruce?
Yeah, I have way back when it was KGON. It's a Russian station now. It's 50 kilowatts. It's less than a mile from me. KEX is just across the freeway. It's about a mile away. It puts out 50 kW. And the frequency between them is, I think it's 330 kilohertz. So trying to get shortwave, there's all these 330 kilohertz birdies everywhere where they're beaten together. And I just can't do it worth the brains here. And what's happening is that the 330 kilohertz beating finds a rectifier somewhere.
Yep.
like a aluminum gutter connection that's not making real good.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, there's a gazillion little rectifiers around your house where you got metal parts that aren't bound together real good. And so it just retransmits all that crap. And it's a zoo.
At a friend's church, right by you up there on Thiessen, it gets the radio station over their PA system. A lot of times it used to be a Spanish station there for a while too, right?
Yeah.
So you get this crazy Spanish music coming right over the PA system.
Well, it's Russian now.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They bought them out. It must be 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the.
And they've tried all kinds of shielding for that, for their microphones and stuff, and it'll just bleed through sometimes.
The Friends Church.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a ham. I can't think of his call right now. But if you do search for ferrite bead filtering, he's actually worked in the audio business for years and years. But I wish I could think of his call sign right now. But he's written like papers, and it's like a novel or like a book on filtering stuff. And I went and at my little cabin, I have I had a stepped wave inverter for powering the electronics. I mean, powering the cabin, period. And I went and got the right mix of beads, and then ran the power leads, each one, wrapped it several times around it to make a really good choke at the lower frequencies, and I was able to actually tame it down. But he points out, people will get these snap-on ferrite beads, which are not as effective as the solid ones. The thing is, they'll put one on and go like, well, it didn't help. No, the thing is that you won't see the improvement until you have to get enough of them on there to choke off the common mode signals that are going down the line, and one or two won't do it, especially if they're not the right mix. So I was able to retain the inverter noise and stuff down quite a bit, where I could actually listen with a broadcast receiver to Honolulu from over 100, 200 miles away, inside the house. So it was made quite a difference. But I had to put a lot of beads on there and a lot of wraps that get rid of the crud.
And does the positioning of the bead matter, or can it be anywhere on the circuit?
Well, I just tried to have as least amount of exposed wire, because that's the thing. In this case, all of your wiring in your house and your connections and stuff, their antenna is broadcasting, energy out. So you want to get close as you can to the source, and you want the shortest, a short lead. So you're not, a couple of feet of wire with a good strong signal is going to radiate, just like your low power broadcast station. That's not an efficient antenna, but you can broadcast quite a ways with, so you want to be as close as you can to the noise source and to effectively choke off the energy.
I can't get away from this noise source.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, I understand that. Because you got all those. The thing is, you got all the rectifiers in your neighborhood. We used to joke about that, the two-way radio business, about taking throwing some rusty bolts up on a site you didn't like, so you could jam them, because with all the energy, rectifying and stuff like that.
So when we moved into this house, back then it was Ma Bell phones. You couldn't use anything else. Anyway, we moved in, and anyway, the phone company came in and installed the phone while I was at work. And anyway, the wife called me, and KEX is just loud and clear, and we're yelling back and forth. And I said, what should I do? And I said, call them back. Well, my phone isn't working. Call them back with this. They'll understand what's going on, So they came back, and they spent hours, and they were putting common mode capacitors all over, and they put some inductors at the entrance, and well, KEX was still about as loud as the other party. And they took off. That's all we can do. Anyway, All right, what's the only nonlinear device in a Ma Bell phone? It's a carbon microphone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not unpacked. I got all my electronic garbage, here and there. And finally, I found a 0.01 capacitor and I put it across that microphone and KEX was gone. Okay, so it must have been 6-8 years later. The neighbor came over to use our phone because theirs quit. Where's your KEX? They're living with it. So I gave him some caps and told him what to do, and God, he was happy. But, as far as the microphone at the Friends Church, you might want to put like 1,000 puff across the input jack. That will probably take care of most of the RF. What's actually happening is that RF is going in and it's getting rectified in your first stage of audio amplification.
Yep.
The amplifier can't respond to the 1 megahertz, but it rectifies and makes audio out of that. It
becomes a receiver.
Yeah, the actual receiver, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you can snuff the 1 megahertz with a 1,000 puff cap, that won't hurt your audio at all.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Anyway, you can try that. It could be in the amplifier itself too, but usually it's something coming in the input.
But it could be anywhere, right? Anywhere.
You see, it's all the antennas coming in.
Yeah.
Every one of those cables is an antenna, and even if they're shielded, it rides on the outside of the shield and couples into the equipment.
Yep. I used to drive my neighbor nuts. I could turn on and off his touch lights. So he'd get up in the morning and turn off all his lights and go downstairs, and he'd come back up the next night and all his lights were on upstairs. Because I'd be doing a noontime net or something in the middle of the day and turn the lights on, and he was sure he turned them off. And it wasn't until he did a Google search for why are my touch lights coming on that he found out to look for a ham radio operator nearby. So I gave him a bunch of chokes, and that was the end of that.
We had a problem with the X10. Occasionally a light would turn on and I'd turn it off and it'd come back on, and the hell? Well, it was the next door neighbor. He had X10 also. We were on the same house code. So once I switched the house code, it was fine. And he didn't have a computer tied to his. So anyway, I ended up programming a bunch of his lights to turn on and off at different times of the day and night. And
fun. Total gaslighting.
Yeah, we were on the same power transformer. So 120 kilohertz went right across.
Modern day, like gaslighting, right?
Yeah. Anyway, he's since moved, and his grandkid has the house, and they don't know what the hell to do with the X10. They couldn't find what turned the light on out on the patio, way up on the peak of the house, shining down on the patio. Well, there is no light switch. Somewhere he's got this X10 buried in the wall or whatever. Anyway, I went over with my remotes and I was able to show him how you could turn it on and off. So anyway, fun stuff. But we've got lights that turn on and off whether we're home or not. The kitchen light, it turns off 11:30, midnight every night. Turns on before dark. We usually have it on before then, but if we're not there, it looks like the house is, and then the hall light goes on and off too.
That we are always occupied, huh?
So we're always occupied. And then we've got a little fish pond in the out back. It's quite a ways from the house. And so I can turn the pump on and off from the house. And then there's also lights around the gazebo where the pond is that I can turn on and off from the house.
Do you have any problems with raccoons?
Oh, yeah. We had some property out of Oregon City. And anyway, the raccoons would come and just devastate things around the pond. I mean, we had the foam insulation on a standpipe, you know, for freezing, and they'd tear that off and just shred it. They'd pull the pots out of the pond. They just totally raise hell. Anyway, put them in a live animal trap, and well, up on my property, the next door neighbor was raising fighting cocks, and the damn fighting cocks are coming over and they're crapping on my tractor, and they're just noisy as hell. Well, there's some of them loose, so I'll take Rocky Raccoon up there, you know, trapped them and put them up there, and you know, another raccoon, put them up there, and pretty soon there's no there's no fighting cocks on the loose anymore, just in the cages.
You fixed one problem. You used one problem to fix another problem.
Yeah.
Well, almost.
Uh-oh.
Well, my bucket and backhoe, I went up there. This thing just jumps to life when you hit the key. And it just went, what the devil? I ran my van up there and jumped it. And I'm looking around, and there's greasy, rocky paw prints on the seat and around the tractor. Okay. Has Rocky done something to my tractor? And sure enough, he unplugged the hydraulics. You know, it's like an air connection, but on a hydraulic hose, and you unplug it and it blocks it off. And so it was running against a dead hydraulic load. Once I plugged the hydraulics back in, the hose back in, started right up. But anyway, so he was trying to get back to me, I guess.
Their hands are as nimble as ours are, you know that? They can, they can open up things. It's interesting. We had a cage that you had to have 2 latches on it. You had to lift you had to keep the latch closed, lift it up, and bring it over to the left, right? So you just couldn't hit it. You had to actually maneuver the latches, and both latches. And the raccoons could do that. They would lift it up, pull it over. So I put a bungee cord on the gate so that they couldn't do it. So they lifted up the latch, pulled the bungee cord off, and then they unhooked the bungee cord too. Okay. So they figured it all out.
Goats are pretty handy at figuring things out too. We've had goats get out of their pen.
Oh yeah.
And they're
really curious too.
And they really love roses.
Oh yeah, they love eating them.
And then there's squirrels. And my brother got one of those so-called squirrel-proof bird feeders.
Oh yeah, the one where they climb down on?
Well, one of them figured out, because I guess it was set up so when they put pressure on it, it would close. I'm trying to remember, it would close the door or something like that. But one of them figured out some way to hang over and hold something open and knock the food on the ground, and his buddies would go down there and get all the food. Oh, yeah.
They're pretty clever.
They are.
Yeah. No, we had to put a electric fence around our roses when we turned the goats loose in the backyard. And then you want to make sure that the door to the garage is shut, because the goats seemed to like the roof of the Chrysler when the wife had a Chrysler. But anyway. And then the wife would go running in the patio door to get the phone that's ringing. And if you weren't careful, that damn goat would go right in with you.
I had a buddy that had a goat that he wanted to put an electric fence up for. So he's worked all day, and this goat was bothering him all day and irritating him. Puts his electric fence up, right? Well, the goat's been sitting there pestering him all day, and the goat's bell and collar were hooked onto the electric fence. So he thought, okay, I'm just gonna turn this electric fence on, right? So he did. He turned the electric fence on, shocked the goat, knocked the goat out. Goat falls over like dead. He runs over there, and he has to give it nose to snout CPR to try to get the goat to come back alive. And he came back alive, and he's like, "You stupid goat! Oh my God, I had to save your life." So he learned not to do that anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so let's see. See that? So that's a Gibson guitar amp,
Oh yeah.
1938. It's interesting in that they used pentodes. What was it?
6L6s.
6J7s
Yeah.
for the input. And they made their pentodes and they wired them as triodes. They tied the screen to the plate.
Yeah.
I didn't pay much attention what the gain on a 6J7 is that way, but they're really, really microphonic. Oh my God. You hardly touch the amplifier and it goes boom. Anyway, schematic doesn't match too well, but anyway, it was fun fixing it up. The guy was really happy with it. But yeah, it uses 6L6s in the output.
Was that a 105? I didn't catch the
What's
model.
that?
Was that a 105? I didn't catch the model.
185.
185?
Yeah, EH 185.
Yeah.
Yeah, the schematic here is quite wrong. The field coil here on the schematic is on ground, and it's freely in the B plus. And the B plus shows 270 volts, but it's really like 360 volts. And the grid's getting the same 360 volts, so it's pushing those 6L6s pretty hard. But anyway, it works pretty good. So it had one metal 6L6, and then it had one 6L GB. They weren't very well matched.
Well
at all.
matched, yeah.
So anyway, I put some industrial, well, military 6L6s in there. Anyway, all the capacitors were wax, and then the filter capacitors, they were a can with wires coming out, and the wires that were coming out were rubber and all broken up. And besides that, there wasn't much capacitance left in those filter caps. Anyway, that was the last fun project. Then there's one behind me. You can see the transistors there sitting vertical. Anyway, I can't get the bias to work and the output trannies on one channel. And I've about exhausted finding a bad transistor. Sometimes it's just something hidden somewhere, you know. You need to unmute there, Pat.
Okay. So Franklin, you said something about if there wasn't any topics that you were going to create one, or, you know.
Yeah, I was thinking if you guys would come up with or even me, come up with some kind of subject that we can just talk about if we don't have any tech talk. And the one I came up with was, what do you think you guys think about? I've noticed a trend of people taking consoles, since consoles are you know, so unwanted nowadays, it seems like, and they're taking them and they're taking the insides of a console out, and then they're recabining into a tabletops or into things like that, just to, you know, even kind of modern. I mean, I've seen some that were just clear boxes with the dials cut out on them. So they've taken as a console radio, you know, shrunken it down into a tabletop cabinet. And I was wondering what you thought about how ethical that is of doing that to, you know, a radio, because you're actually, you know, you're really using it as in inside parts. And because as you know, console radios seem to be going away. I mean, seem to be out there, and nobody wants them because they just take up too much room.
Yeah, make a chair side out of them.
Yeah, chair side, exactly.
Yeah.
When I was
You don't think
first,
there's anything wrong with that as a being a
Yeah.
radio enthusiast and restorers? Because the cabinet's going to go away, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
going to be destroyed, burnt, or whatever.
it's kind of sad there's not room for it, but and when I was first collecting, I was really always looking for consoles, and I could never find them. I didn't know where to look for them. Eventually, I did, but when I first was collecting it, I didn't see them very often. But I don't know if Pat would have been there. There was this one sale in Northeast Portland that the house was so packed with radios and stuff that the floors were almost collapsing. And the place was full of those boxy late 40s consoles. You know, I call them, to me, they're ugly. I mean, you know, something before them when you got some style, but the modern ones, like the 1949 and later, and this place was packed full of those things. And we came back to the sale the next day, just look through, you know, everything again, and they all said sold.
Huh.
And I went, what? And I went up to the guy. He was he was one of those estate collector guys you always see, and he was running the sale. And I said, they're sold? He says, yeah, this one guy in Salem wanted them and bought them all. And I think I can't remember what he told. I said, what did you get for those, or something like that? And it wasn't that much money, but it was you know, way too much for those consoles. And I just said, you're gonna burn in hell for that. But apparently, you know, somebody a little bit, you know, younger, maybe that was the radio the parents had, and I guess they're just figuring that they're gonna collect those and save them and restore them, and then they'll become the next big thing, I guess. And that could be the case, but
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, just don't have the room for them.
no, I don't either.
I've got one of those Philco projection sets, and that's enough. Projection TVs. And I haven't even been able to put it out where I can display it. That really pisses me off.
Hmm.
So
It's
Pat,
oh,
Pat, you know, Sonny does one fantastic job on those faceplates, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And
So yeah, on the console radios, you know, I guess it's better than chopping up for firewood. I know there was a big thing with a lot of the millennials and X-Geners. They like to take the old wood ones, and some of them paint them bright baby blue and orange and yellow and red, and they repurpose them. And I can't believe it. But there was a Facebook page somewhere, and they were getting good money for that. And I go, oh my God, all I have to do is take all these console radios that we're getting from the club, you know, buy them for $5 or $10 each, painting them some obscene color, and I could get $50-$75 for each and every one of them. They're really hot with the X-Geners and the Millenniums, and I just don't get it.
yeah, well, I've got a Magnavox console cabinet out, which really is a storage cabinet. There's no radio in it anymore. Well, radio and phonograph. So it's a double wide kind of a thing, you know. Anyway, my wife uses that for storage. And it's blonde, which is not your normal color for a wood radio, but.
Yeah. No, the blonde oak stuff is really hot right now. Yeah, oh yeah, mid-century stuff. Oh yeah, they if you had one of those old blonde oak you know, the RCA record players on the spindly legs, you could probably get a couple $100 for it if it was working. I just cannot believe what people are paying for this stuff. But you know, one day when it's all done and gone, all these console radios, they'll say, oh, where are they? My great grandmother used to have one of those, and it might actually be worth something because they've all been repurposed. You know, that's kind of how collectibles go. They're, you know, cheap, and they get, destroyed or thrown away, and all of a sudden one day, years later, people wake up and wow, where are all the console radios? And then they'll start actually be worth something again.
Yeah, that's like the collecting world. All the stuff that went on clearance that nobody bought and nobody saved is valuable now. It's really come around. So
one of the things with consoles, though, if you're going to take a console and put it into a smaller cabinet, consoles sometimes had like 10 and 12-inch speakers. So you might have I won't call it a challenge, I'll just call it an opportunity.
Yeah.
To fit the speaker in your smaller cabinet. But you can always change speakers. That's not that hard to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know what the COVID thing has brought a lot of people out of the woodwork wanting radios repaired, I've found. I've had a lot of people that are wanting a console repaired, but I'm old and I'm in a basement and no thanks. I don't want to carry a console down here. But there's been a lot of people, I guess, they're isolated at home and I'd like to have grandpa or granddad's, radio running again. There's really been a lot of requests.
Well, Bruce, are you turning work away?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, how are they getting hold of you? Is it through just word of mouth or on the website or?
A lot of it's on the website, and B comes first. So I'm on the top of the list, I guess. and there is some word of mouth that's gotten around. And so a lot of times I am, you got to go talk to Blake on that one. Yeah, there's somebody that wanted his audio radio fixed, and the main problem was the tape deck in it, and I don't want to get involved in the tape decks, so I sent him to Blake. I think doesn't he work on tape decks? I don't know. Yeah, I have to say, I would go check somebody else up there on the web, This one here, my son has been buying mainly esoteric hi-fi equipment on Craigslist and Goodwill. And he's been fixing them up and selling them for good money. Well, once in a while he gets stuck. Hey, Dad. So that's what this is here.
Are you about to give up on that one too?
I am about ready to give up on it. I've got a few more transistors to check. It's really, even the channel that works, the bias on the outputs is just touchy as hell. But then the bias on this one channel, you can't, it's got lots of crossover distortion, and it's basically unadjustable. It's got a pot in there, but it doesn't do much.
What brand is it?
What is this one? Yamaha.
Oh, yeah, and that's and that was a reputable company, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now the biasing in that circuit is really, it's weird. It's not very straightforward.
Bruce, does your son get much phase linear stuff in?
He had one here. Oh, I don't know. It was about 4 or 5 months ago. Yeah.
I've got the 4,400 pair.
Yeah, he just totally recapped it. I don't know. Most of the stuff, I don't just go through and recap everything, but if I find a bad cap, okay, are there other caps in there like it? Okay, I'll replace those then. it was interesting working on a 7612 oscilloscope at the museum. And anyway, it quit working. And we didn't have schematics for this particular date. They totally changed the microprocessor board, and the front panel wouldn't light up. And well, it must be the microprocessor. Well, we don't have schematics for that. Okay. But we do know what signals are coming in on the back plane. So I start looking at clocks and such, and here's power on, 40 kilohertz. Boy. That's not giving the processor much time to get up and going. Anyway, it turned out it was a cap on the power supply after one of the switchers. And so I took the cap out. Okay. Wow. We got a bunch of exact replacements for this cap. Okay. So I'll put them on the LRC meter and get the best one for dissipation. Well, it's 180 microfarads. 5 of them were less than 500 puff. So even the brand new caps of that particular brand and value were bad. 2 of them were okay, but I decided I'd switch brands because that didn't look like a very good reliability.
What brands were they?
Unused parts that, what's that?
What brands were they?
I don't know because they didn't actually have the brand on it, but they had these numbers. And the cap that I put in, I don't remember what the brand of the cap was I put in, but it was even a different form factor.
Really? Wow.
So anyway, when you find a bad cap, if you got more bad caps or more caps like that in your radio, you probably want to replace them all. You know, a lot of radios have got original caps on that are 50 years old, you know, and they keep on playing. I think I'm going to run. I got to make a phone call for a guy.
Okay.
I'm going to bail out too, Bruce. I'm with you.
Yeah, it's been an hour anyway, guys. So that's good.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can come up with some better ideas next meeting. Better subject.
Sounds good.
All right.
See everybody
Just good to
next
say,
week.
Thanks,
just good to
Scott.
say hi. So
Email me.
See you guys.
Mark,
you.
Mark, before you
Thanks,
go,
Frank.
you want to do one next week?
What's that?
You want to do one next week?
Oh, I'm swamped with work next week.
All righty.
I'll probably be here.
Will you do one? You want to do one on military radios?
Oh, I don't want to do it. No, I don't have anything prepared. I just thought you may, or is someone going to be here?
Oh, no. I just want to know. I'd want you to do. Why don't you just do a presentation on one of your military radios? You don't have to do any fancy.
Right now they're in storage.
Oh, do you have one around?
Well,
Our picture of one? You don't have to do much.
One that's good to show.
Oh, okay.
But I'll tune in and listen.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
see you
Bye,
later.
everybody.
See ya.
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye now.
Listening. Right.